Hello, everybody. This is Oops Spoilers. This is a Those Other Girls media production. This is a podcast where we talk about movies, TV shows, and now books. And I give my opinion. Now it's a we. Finally, I say we. And now I have a guest. We have Victoria. Woo!
Thanks for having me.
Some of you, if you are longtime listeners of the Those Are the Girls regular podcast, you may remember her. I mean, it would make sense if you did, if you're a longtime listener. If you don't, that's a little strange. It hasn't been that long. But did you recommend the book to me?
I think so. I think because we heard it on The Toast. The girls
Yes.
on The Toast talk about it all the time. And I had read it, I think, like this time last year. And I think you had posted that you were looking at reading it, or like you texted me that said, I think I'm going to read it. And I go, you need to read it. It's so good.
Yeah, and The Toast talked about it. I want to say Alex even talks about it for a second. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very, very popular. We haven't said the name of the book yet, but it's called The Luckiest Girl Alive by Jessica Knoll. And it is also made into a movie on Netflix. And we're going to be talking about both of them. We're going to go over what we liked, what we didn't like, what was similar, what was not similar, all the things. But before we do that, I want to say a trigger warning. The movie and the book both talks pretty graphically. I feel like the book wasn't as graphic as the movie, but the movie was very graphic. So if you are, struggling with things such as rape and sexual assault, this might not be a good podcast because we're going to talk about everything. And it also might not be a good movie to watch either.
And it touches a little bit on eating disorders.
Yeah.
More in the book than the movie. The movie, has, a binge eating scene and has, her inner dialogue talking about it. But, other than that, you really don't get anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. So if these are two topics that you just really can't handle right now because of the season you're in, no problem. But this podcast and the movie for sure is not something you should watch. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's just go ahead and get right to it. So what I always do is I read the description of the book and then we just or the description of the movie, and then we just go through everything. So the movie description is literally just one sentence. A woman in New York who seems to have things under control is faced with a trauma that makes her life unravel. And that's the IMDb description. Let me see if I can find the book description really quick.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to beat you to it.
Okay, if you find it, you can read it.
Because I think, the IMDb description, it really does not explain what the story is.
No, not... And I think that's why people didn't know... Because if you have been keeping up with the movie at all, or the book and things like that, you would know that it has been a little controversial because the movie description didn't say anything. It had no mention of what was going to be in it.
So I have it up. Her perfect life is a perfect lie. As a teenager at the prestigious Bradley School, Ani Fanelli endured a shocking public humiliation that left her desperate to reinvent herself. Now with a glamorous job, expensive wardrobe, and handsome blue-blood fiancé, she's this close to living the perfect life she's worked so hard to achieve. But Ani has a secret. There's something else buried in her past that still haunts her, something private and painful that threatens to bubble to the surface and destroy everything. With a singular voice and twist you won't see coming, Luckiest Girl Alive explores the unbearable pressure that so many women feel to have it all and introduces a heroine whose sharp edges and cutthroat ambition have been protecting a scandalous truth and a heart that's bigger than it first appears. The question remains, will breaking her silence destroy all that she has worked for, or will it at long last set Ani free?
That's a much better description. And I think also too, thinking about it and talking about it, the movie and the book had different themes or conclusions almost. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I definitely feel, and I think I'll talk about it too, because I wrote notes down because I watched it last week. And so I definitely feel how it told the story was very different.
Very different.
So, and I guess we can go a little bit more in detail. So, the movie's about Ani, who has kind of reinvented herself. She's getting married in like 6 weeks, but she keeps getting asked by this documentary crew who is doing a documentary on her high school shooting. And she kept telling them no. Her fiance encouraged her to tell them no and just never dealt with that trauma of the high school shooting. But even like and I think this is like what the book really did a good job of it, because like we get told in the beginning of the movie, and I think the beginning of the book too, that there's a chance that she could have been involved in it.
Yes, I think so.
And
In
I think
my
the book did a good job leading it up, because it's like with the book, it's like, well, do we know she's involved in it? Where in the movie, and it might have just been too because like I had already read the book and knew what was coming, I really didn't get that feeling. I felt like in the movie it was more like, okay, we're going to explain to you why she's not involved, versus I felt like with the book it kind of explained to you this is how she could be involved.
Yeah. I will say, though, in the book, I never for once thought she was involved. Did you kind of get the feeling she was?
No, but I think it's like she's still like, I think I saw where she could have been.
Okay,
And just
like,
because it
yeah.
built up to it. Like, yeah, no, I didn't think she was, but it built up to it because, like, I don't know how many thrillers you've read. This is very much like a thriller-esque type writing style, but I really did think, like, the book, because it's with a thriller, it's like, okay, like, the obvious answer's not the answer.
Right,
And
right.
so, like, I knew that she didn't do it, but the book, how it was written, it was like, okay, like, we're building up to it.
Yeah. Like, if literally, well, let's get into what happened. So with the book and the movie, it starts off in present day where we're learning about Ani. We learn about, like, who she is and, like, some of the things. She's living in New York. I've sent a picture. I wouldn't post it, but if you ever asked me, I'd show you guys. I sent a picture of Victoria, this girl I went to high school. Literally, her wedding, the venue, everything was exactly how I pictured Ani having. It's like this New York old money type lifestyle. She's working for a magazine. And I think it's also very interesting. She's working for a women's magazine, and she only does sex column articles. So, and it talks kind of, it gives you this idea that she thinks she can be better than this. And, you know, I have my opinions on that, but it gives, in the book and the movie, it gives you the sense that she could be better than this. And then in the book, it goes back to, we learn more about like why she moved to a different school. She was going to a Catholic school at first, and then she goes to this new school in a richer part of town, which I find very interesting. I cannot necessarily say I relate to her that much, but I do know how it feels to go to a school where you might think that you're not like poor, but then you're around these other people, you're like, oh, well, we certainly aren't rich. So that was very interesting, that dynamic, because I don't think we see a lot of because like there's a difference between like being poor and going to a rich school, and then being like middle class and going to a rich school. And I feel like we don't get a lot of movies or TV shows, because that's very relatable, because I think I'm probably not the only person who feels that way, that like, because there is a difference between you know, between being poor and like being middle class. So we learn about that. And then also too, I really liked how they talked about her mom, because I think it gives a really good background of how she was incredibly middle class. And I don't remember if it was at the beginning or where it was in the book, but what I really noticed, she said that in her town, people were buying like designer bags and things like that, but the rich people weren't buying all that designer stuff. Like, they didn't have the BMWs. They had like the more, you knew they were rich cars, but they weren't as flashy. So I just think that was interesting too. So this is like giving us background about like who she is, how she grew up, so we kind of figure out who she is. And also it talked a little bit about her, I like how you said eating disorder, because I'm gonna be honest with you, some of the stuff she said, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get that. But yeah, you're right, that is like eating disorder. Do you want to talk about that really quick? About how at the beginning?
Yeah, so she really talks about, because I think she was known as like the fat kid in high school, And so, like, she's now, like, crazy skinny and kind of unhealthy skinny, very, like,
Yeah.
concerned and focused on her looks. Like, she works out a like, crap ton. She hardly eats, and she doesn't eat in front of her fiance like she would. And
Yeah.
so
And she takes
they,
Adderall to make her not eat too.
yeah, and so they are at this pizza restaurant after going to their registry stuff, and he gets up to go to the bathroom, and he's like, "Get a box for this," and there's like two slices left, and she just like stuffs them quickly in her mouth, and like the waitress sees, and it was like, "Okay, like I get you." So then when her fiance comes back, she's like, "Oh no, the waitress dropped it all over me. We didn't get to take the pizza home." So then like he has like this mindset, and like she's created this persona, which I don't have an eating disorder, but I've heard other people who do talk about it. And I think that's like part of it too. It's like you create this persona that everything is perfect, everything is fine. I read Jeanette McCurdy's book,
Ooh.
and that's really how she kind of described it and talked about it. It's like she came across as like her life was like perfect, like there's nothing going on behind closed doors, and where behind closed doors it was a living hell for her.
Yeah.
And so I think like they did a really good job of kind of like, and they only touched on like the eating disorder like briefly,
Mm-hmm.
but
Especially in the movie.
yeah, and I think it was more heavily focused on in the book.
It was like a thread throughout the book, it showed how it kind of developed. It showed how it has lasted with her. Whereas in the movie, it was just kind of like this is a little thing about her personality, which you kind of get because they should have made it a limited series. Like that's my big, well, we'll get there, but like they should have made it a limited series. Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So I guess where do you want to go next? Because I feel like we haven't really given like a good, like we gave the summary and like, but it's like, okay, if you didn't watch it, so like we start off, she's engaged, her life looks perfect. This documentary
Yeah.
crew is trying to bring up past trauma, and so, and I think too, like she did like a really good, or the movie did a good job of like showcasing her past trauma.
That
Of,
I think,
like, you
yeah.
got it, because this is like where I had an issue with it versus the book. So in the book, the story is kind of told out through the documentary and her interviews for the documentary. Where in the movie, it was, okay, something triggered a flashback. And that's how the story is woven based off triggers that she had.
Yes. And that's a very good very good point about the difference. So once they give us like the background at the beginning of the book and the movie, they started just telling us about what was going on in the past, and then it will flash forward to what's going on now, and we just saw her break down. And I guess quickly on the past, and then we can talk about the differences. So in the past, spoilers. Now it's nothing going to be spoiled, nothing but spoilers. So heads up, spoilers, everyone. So if you don't want to be spoiled anymore, stop right here. So long story short, she is in this new high school. She gets in with this crowd of these two girls who are considered a little bit looser. They're popular. She gets in that crowd. She goes to a party that they throw, gets belligerently drunk.
I think they also roofied her too, if I recall.
Oh, you think they? Okay.
I think they also roofied her.
Okay. That could be possible. It could have been like one of those understated things that went whoosh for me, but that's definitely possible. Long story short,
I think it was in the book.
Okay. Long story short, she's belligerent, like she blacks out, and she's actually sexually assaulted. So there is someone who comes and assaults her with his mouth.
She's gang raped.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And then another boy comes in, and yeah. So that's a gang rape is a perfect way to say it.
So essentially, she gets gang raped by her boyfriend and then his friends.
Yes. Who's not officially her boyfriend yet, but it's it's one of, they're in high school, so they want to understand. So this thing happens. So in the book, so this is another difference from the book. So in the book, we also see another chance where the girls the popular group gives her another chance to be cool and to join them, and she messes it up because while she is with the guy that she does not want to be with, but the guy that the main guy who assaulted her is trying to hit on her and get with her, she has a flashback and ends up hitting him. She's at her friend's house and the parents don't know. She hits him and he screams, and the parents hear him and they all have to leave because they invited boys who weren't supposed to have boys there. So this is also where it deviates. So this part was not included in the movie. And then this other part, which I would love to hear your opinion on this part, so she is wandering the streets and she's found by her teacher. And it's established that this is one of the cool teachers, almost a la Ezra.
Years older than them.
Yeah, a la Ezra Fitz, everyone. So he finds her and brings her back to his apartment. They don't do anything. It's nothing sexual about it. But he helps her. She's very drunk. She's battered and bloodied, and he's helping her and everything. She sleeps over in his bed. He sleeps outside on the couch. She gets uncomfortable, or she has a nightmare, so he comes and sleeps on the floor by her bed, but absolutely nothing happens. The next morning, he's we got to tell your parents, and she's no, we can't tell my parents. We can't tell my parents. Okay, so that happens. And this was not included in the movie. I'm curious, what do you think about that?
Well, I think there was a part included because
there was a. Okay, so
she did it twice.
No, she only slept over his place once.
But I thought that was after the rape because she ran out. I thought that was what.
No. She's after the gang rape. She just left. She just left and was wandering. She didn't go to him. She only slept over him. What I'm saying though is there was this underlying will they won't they in the book about the teacher.
There's an underlying sexual tension.
Yeah, and I'm why is that there?
Yeah, why? I think I don't know because I think what I didn't like was, and I think I wrote this down. I wish we had more details about her school life because I felt
in the movie for sure.
I felt the book was about her school days, where the movie was about her as an adult.
Yes. Oh,
and I wish we had gotten more. I wish there was more of a focus on the school days because I feel the school
that made her who she is.
Yes, and because I felt the Mila Kunis era when she was an adult, I feel that was not necessary to tell the story where her school days were because you really miss the whole reason why she became a writer and was kind of motivated was because of this teacher saw a real potential and really encouraged her to write and read and do all of that. And so they had a friendship relationship, and I think it was also, I think it was there on purpose of will they, won't they, but I think it was more to kind of show I guess a caring aspect because I feel
okay,
the school
I can see
really
that.
was nobody there cared about Ani, but this one teacher.
Yeah.
And that was kind of maybe, I don't know, a little humanity maybe behind it.
Yeah.
That is we finally there's one normal person that's not crazy and weird at this school.
Yeah.
Even though the whole situation was probably the most abnormal that you'd see in a normal school, but in that school it's he's the only normal one.
Yeah. 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 I think adding him, like you said, adding him and the other aspects of the things that happen at school would have made Mila, adult her more, I guess, understandable. It would have made a little bit more sense. because we see that, so that happens, and then she becomes ostracized from the group, and the girls take her, and this was not in the movie. So the girls take her underwear, or no, her shorts that have period stains on them, and they put it on like a bulletin board in the hallway, and everybody finds out. So that's how she becomes friends with Arthur, the weirdo kid who
Arthur and Ben.
Yes. Well, no, Ben was in the insane asylum at the time. In the book, he was in the insane asylum.
That's right.
So she becomes friends with Arthur. And this is another back to the eating disorder thing. And also, too, in the book, Arthur was like morbidly obese. Like he was a really big guy. And what she would do, after track practice, she would go, during track practice, she would go to his house because he lived near there, and they would just eat. They would just eat a bunch of random things. They'd make a bunch of food, and they would just hang out and just like be best buddies and everything. And then that's when they started to get to know each other better, and that's when he learned about Ben. And at this time, Ben is in an insane asylum because he tried to unalive himself. And Arthur, you can tell Arthur has some resentment in him. His father left him. Also, Ben is gay, and it's implied Arthur might be gay as well. And Arthur used to be friends with Dean, who was the main person who who raped Ani. And Arthur used to be friends with Dean, and he has a very like terrible hatred for Dean. Okay, that's important as well. So they're developing this friendship. They get in a fight. Because
but I think it's also important because like this is part that's in the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I am getting this book a little confused with another one that was very similar I read.
Ooh,
but didn't they kind of do a whole like Mean Girls burn book?
Yes, they did.
Yes. And that was like, it's like, okay, well, this is kind of how Ani could have also been involved, like, because Ben and Arthur are the ones that go and do the school shooting. This is kind of how Ani, because she like also like wrote stuff and like hated the students.
You're right. This is very important.
Targeting.
Yeah. So that was part of their like in the middle of track practice thing. They would eat, they'd hang out, and they'd write in the yearbook. They'd goof off. They'd say terrible things, ways that they would hurt these mean bullies. And Arthur gets mad at Ani because Ani has a chance to get Dean in trouble for all the things that he's been through, and he doesn't do it. She doesn't do it, so she gets mad at him. But the biggest catalyst, which is not shown in the movie, which once again, this would have been so much better as a limited series because we're missing key elements to why she is the way she is. And like, I felt like it went too fast. I was like, how did A get to C so quickly? But
I think they could have also, I'm looking it up, I think they could have also made the movie longer. Because I don't think, I mean, it might have been like an hour and a half max.
Maybe less. I feel like it was less than an hour and a half.
Like, I think it could have easily...
It was too short.
I think if they made it at least 2 hours.
Yeah.
I think it would have been enough.
Marvel does it all the time. So this part is also crucial too. So Ani and Arthur are in a class.
It was an hour and 55 minutes.
It was an hour and 55 minutes? That can't be right.
That's enough. I just looked it up.
Okay, so that's what it needed to be a limited series. So Arthur and Ani are in a class. Long story short, the teacher calls Ani pretty much a slut, and Arthur stands up for Ani and gets kicked out of school. Ani comes home, visits him at his home during her track practice a couple days later, and it's like, hey, like, you haven't been at school. He's like, I got kicked out, blah, 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 blah. So then they get in a fight and disperse. So Ani doesn't hear or see from him. Then this is the big thing. This is what the documentary is about. The documentary is about the school shooting. They're all sitting lunch. I almost didn't really, when I listened to it, I almost didn't really understand what was happening at first because I feel like it was just, which I think is how
it
a school shooting.
So quickly because that's how it is.
Right. That made plenty of sense for not to come quickly. So
can we pause real quick though before we get into that? I think because the book does a good job too, kind of going back to her eating disorder, where it really started with her mom. because her mom was obsessed with
Oh,
her look and like
yes.
obsessed with like what people thought of them, and it's like even though they didn't have money, she still like got like BMW, like older BMWs, older
Mm-hmm.
versions of like handbags, like
Yeah.
handbags, and was really like obsessed with her look. And her mom, I believe, was like commenting, it's like, Ani, like you've gained weight. And when Ani came and said like I'm gonna run track, she was like, great, because you need to lose some weight.
Yeah.
And I think that was like a big factor also in her eating disorder, and like really kind of part of the start of it too. It was like a huge influence from like her mom and like how she said stuff.
Yeah, I think that in parents' pursuit to, I guess, help, I don't know how they think it's going to help, but in parents' pursuit to help, they can come across very mean because, especially if it's from your mom, like you internalize that things. You don't
Mm-hmm.
forget that. That's something that you're like, because your mom is supposed to be the one who's always going to tell you the truth, who's always going to help you and be there. So if your mom thinks you look so disgustingly fat, then like, oh gosh, everyone else must think that. It's yeah, I think you're right. It definitely stemmed from her mom, and then it just kind of filtered through because you also kind of see it as she got older. Her mom made comments about what she was eating and what she was wearing, and how she's you're marrying this really rich guy. You got to keep up the part. You got to keep looking like this. You can't. Don't mess this up. That's how her mom
Yeah,
was.
and I think she learned to play this part because her mom did it.
Yeah.
And I think too, like the one thing that the book also left out was also her relationship with her dad.
Yes, because in the movie, you mean the movie? Because
Sorry, the
in
movie left out the like because the dad was in the picture, but
yeah,
like the dad and the mom were not. They and I think maybe did the dad like die like
when
before
no, because
he was still
when they
alive?
no, because when the mom and the aunt went to have lunch with her or dinner, um the reason why she brought the aunt is because the dad didn't want to come.
Yeah, yeah.
The dad was just a deadbeat father, essentially, that just happened to live in the house. That's what it seemed like. A
And it
deadbeat
seemed
husband too.
very unhappy in the marriage, and
Yeah.
was just like, and it was more of like the mom like kind of just controlling everything, controlling like the family's narrative, and the dad's like, just have this average Joe job. I really don't make this type of money. Like, we really shouldn't be spending this. The mom's like, no, we got to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And these all, and also too, I think it all accumulates to you have these feelings about yourself, and the bullies were bullies. I'm not excusing them, but hurt people hurt people. So you have these feelings about yourself already. Same with Arthur. Arthur felt bad about himself, and now they're doing all these things to, they're writing the
Get
books. They're doing a burn book. They want to. What'd you say?
get even.
They want to get even. They want to get revenge. So they're sitting in the cafeteria, and then all of a sudden the sprinklers go off, and a bomb goes off. And then, long story short, Arthur and Ben, who came out of the insane asylum, shoots up the school. So they're running, they go through it all. You see it for the most part on the movie. They go through it all. The one part I want to talk about, or two things I want to talk about, is how, so Liam and Dean were both people who raped her, and they're both people who she had like direct, they were both her bullies, or as well eventually, and they both had like direct interaction with her. So what happened with Liam is Liam was hurt, he was shot in the head, I believe, but he still was alive, and they were going to try to drag him and pull him out, but they couldn't because he was still alive, but they couldn't get to him. They couldn't do it and run to save themselves, so they had to leave him. And to me, that was like the saddest one. Like, I could not believe that. That was so sad. And it turned out that like he ended up dying, of course, but like it was like a slow death when everything was happening because they couldn't get to him. Nobody could get to him. So the ending climax of the shooting was they go. So it's Ani and her friend, who was also kind of like bullied and was not cool, but was friends with Arthur and Ben. Ani and her friend face Arthur. He comes in, he has the gun. He tells the friend, go ahead and leave, I like you. And the girl turns back and is like, I'm so sorry. And she runs and leaves. Obviously, you can't, this is your one chance out. So then he turns to Ani, I'm sorry, and then Dean is also in the room. So Dean is on the ground, terrified. Arthur shoots. No, Arthur doesn't shoot him first. So Dean is scared, terrified. Arthur turns and tries to give the gun to Ani and is like, shoot Dean.
I think Dean got hurt from the bomb.
Oh, you're right. So Dean is on the ground. He's hurt from the bomb, and he can't get up and run. And Arthur's in, and he tries to give the gun to Ani, and it's like, shoot Dean. Shoot him now. Like, this is your chance. Like, you got it. And she's like, hesitant. What I find very interesting is she's hesitant in the book, and then she kind of sort of I think she takes it, and then gives it back in the movie, right?
I think he shoves it in her hands.
Okay. Because in the book, it made it seem...
She didn't, like, go and grab it. I think, but even if she did, I think it was more from, like, the trauma of, like, the guy with the gun.
Right.
I'm gonna do it, you know?
Right. So, and then she doesn't shoot him. Arthur shoots him in his private area, and then Ani turns around and stabs him. And in the book, I don't remember if he says this in the movie, but in the book he says, I was just trying to help. And I do not know why, but at that moment I like burst into tears. And then in the movie, I don't think he just dies, right? I don't think he says that, does he?
I think he says it somewhere.
Okay. You're right. He says it somewhere, but he doesn't say it right at the moment when he dies. So then Ani realizes she stabbed him and runs out. So that is a big climax. That is what happens. You know, they go through all the stages of grief. They have a funeral. She is not really wanted at the funeral. They don't let her in the funeral in the movie. She does go to the funeral, but people are talking about her in the book, which I thought was interesting.
Movie, it was like, so in the book, we don't know why people think she did it. But in the movie, it was like Dean told people she was involved because he was scared she would come out about him raping her and also bullying Arthur. Where I don't think he did that in the book. I think it was more I think he actually thought she was involved a little bit.
Yes. Okay.
Or in the movie, he knew she wasn't involved, but said the rumors anyway.
Yes, because so, you know, she gets interviewed by a therapist and everything, and she's not reacting the way they think she should react. And then it turns out she was actually best friends with Arthur. Turns out she was being bullied by the people who were shot and killed. So then they're kind of like, okay, what's going on? So then they find the book, the burn book that Victoria and I were talking about earlier. So then they're like, okay, ding, 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 what's going on? You are it. So then she goes and talks to the police a couple of times. This isn't in the movie. But she goes and talks to the police a couple of times, and then they eventually rule her out because she couldn't do it. And she didn't do it. We know she didn't do it. She wasn't a part of it. So that's what happens in the past. So then her senior year, she goes on this trip to New York. She bumps into this girl who is like looks fabulous, and the girl like doesn't really say excuse me or something like that because the girl is in control, and she decides that's the person she wants to be. So she markets the rest of her life like that. When she went to an Ivy League college, she made friends with specific types of people. She did all these things to be somebody else, and I think that is this is such a good example of how you can wake up one day and realize that you've been lying and faking so many things because you want to get to a certain goal. And essentially that's what she realizes. She realizes she has made up this person she is. She has become who she's just become a different person that's not really her. And she ends up calling off the wedding. I thought it was very interesting how it happened in the movie versus the book. And throughout, also too, she ends up meeting up, in the book, she ends up meeting up with that teacher whose bed she slept in but did not sleep with. And they end up having like a will they won't they moment, and they almost kiss, but they don't kiss, which I was glad they didn't kiss. I was just so against that. Vehemently, even though they're adults now, I was just so against it, especially because he was married.
Little Liars trauma.
What maybe because I was in love with Ezra. Like I didn't see a problem with it in the 10th grade, which I think that kind of says a lot right there. But anyway, and I think this came out around like it was originally written in like 2013 or something.
I think 15.
Oh yeah, that was around the time. That was when Riverdale did it too. That was when
Yeah.
the student teacher relationships were popular in pop culture.
Yeah, because I think
Anywho,
it was
oh,
really
go ahead.
interesting. So, like, in the movie, she, like, ended her engagement because I think her fiance wasn't supportive of her decisions and her career.
I feel like in the
And
movie,
didn't really respect her trauma either. Like, he was also very concerned with, like, how stuff looks. Where
mm-hmm.
in the book, he was very supportive of
I
her.
was gonna say, I feel like in the movie he came off kind of like a jerk. Also,
Yeah.
too, the guy who played him, he always plays like weirdo jerks anyway. So maybe that was, I mean, maybe I have trauma from that as well. But like,
Or
I
maybe
just
it was
got this
less
like,
explaining is why they did it, you know?
yeah. Wait, say that again. Maybe
Less
because of
stuff
what?
less explaining. It's like less stuff that
Mm.
they had to explain and like dive in deeper because like he was like a really good guy, but at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like she wasn't in love with him. She was just in love with like the thought of who she is with him. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, but the other thing too that I wish, so like I said earlier, so like her high school story was told through her interviews with the documentary. So in the movie, you don't find out till like the end of the movie that she decided to participate in the documentary, but only for a little bit, and then she left. Where in the book, she participated throughout the whole, and then after she broke it off with her fiance, is and honest and after too she kind of worked through some of the trauma with the documentary crew is when she was like she like commented she's like yeah like I've put on a little bit of weight like I've changed stuff about me back to how I would have liked it not what the world would like to see.
Yeah.
And I think like that's the thing you really don't see in the movie is like her character starting to heal at the end. Where in the book you really get that.
Yeah. And I think that her healing at the end is like the real like bow on it. It's like the purpose of the movie, purpose of the book. It's like a good way to wrap it up. And it was earned. Like her healing was earned.
Yes.
Whereas in the movie, it was just kind of like some girl said something mean to her, and she goes, "You B word," and then like walks off, and it's like, wait, what? That was such a weird ending to me. I was like, I mean, yes, she
Yeah,
got her strength. It was just like, what?
yeah, like I said, like I don't feel like we got any healing from her
No.
because it's like I felt like she was just like the only thing that was different is she got the job at New York Times, wrote that piece, and then was on the Today Show and was like able to finally share her story. But I really didn't feel like she got the healing that she needed.
No. And I feel like I will say what I thought was powerful because and that's the other thing too. I feel like the movie really focused on the sexual assault and what the rape. I want to start. It was a rape. The movie really focused on that, and I feel like when Dean said the comment, "Well, I don't want you to say anything because I have a wife and daughters. I don't want you to say who I was," and how upsetting that was. Or I thought that like moments like that were good. It felt like it was more of a movie about that as opposed to like someone going through a healing journey or more of a or even like the shooting. Like the shooting was so glossed over. Like if you were on your phone for 5 minutes, you wouldn't have known it happened, type of thing. So
And that was like the whole point of the book too, because the book was the documentary. The documentary was about the shooting.
yeah, yeah. That's
And
a
I
good
think
point
maybe
too.
that's why we got it differently. And I think it was very much. I think the reason why they focused the way they did is I think they wanted kind of like a Me Too story.
And that's what it felt like.
And that's what it was, and which nothing's wrong with that. And I think it was interesting too, like at the end of it, like you kind of go how she like stood up to the woman that didn't believe her.
Yes,
Like, showing how like how even like I mean, if you're a victim of anything, people are gonna say you lied.
Yeah, that's so true.
You know, and I think that's what they're trying to show was that. But I really like we said, she in the movie she didn't get the healing that she did in the
No.
book, which
And
I think that was like the really the biggest disappointment for me.
I agree. So let's wrap it up. I think the biggest, well, I feel like this is not a good thing to wrap it up on, but the movie was okay.
Yeah.
The biggest disappointment for me was I felt like it was way too short, and I felt like nothing was earned. I feel like it was very preachy toward the end, which isn't necessarily bad. I watch preachy movies, but like it just didn't feel like it earned it. It was rushed. It was absolutely rushed.
I do think Mila Kunis was perfectly casted for this.
Yes.
But I don't think the younger. So I think Mila Kunis was perfectly cast for the older Ani. The actress that played the younger Ani was also perfectly casted, but I don't think they were perfectly casted together because they don't look anything alike.
They look absolutely nothing alike.
I thought they were perfectly casted for the roles, but not because they look alike.
Yeah. Does that make sense? It makes plenty of sense. Except I disagree. I do not think she was a good young Ani. I like her as an actress. She played Jeanette in that show that came out last summer. It's blanking, but you guys, I'm sure everybody's seen it.
It's on like Freeform. I think it was
with the girl named Mallory. Why can I not remember?
Oh well,
whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. So she played that, and I think she's
because I think those roles were very similar.
Yes, and I think she did a great job. Like she acted really well. I just don't think that role was for her. I kind of wish they had gotten a chubbier girl to like express the purpose of it. And I think that I feel like she was very pretty.
But can I say too, what if it's not like, I mean, the book talked about her being like bigger, but what if it's more of like a body dysmorphia?
Oh, I didn't think of that.
She thought she was bigger and she had all these inner thoughts. But what if it's just like,
when we actually saw her
teenager going through puberty, size-wise should have been.
That's a good point. And that's something that I feel like was not mentioned or explored. Like, I wish they had said that through some form. They made it seem like she was this big. Same with Arthur. I thought Arthur was going to be, like, a little bit chubbier. But he looked almost unhealthily skinny for his age.
Yeah, I don't think Arthur was meant to be, like, the fat kid. And
even in the book, I thought that was his purpose.
Yeah, but not in the movie.
Oh, not in the movie. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I think, kind of going back, I think it was more. I don't think Mila's character, like older Ani. I really think it was body dysmorphia in the movie. Maybe not necessarily the book, but in the movie, I definitely think it was more of a body dysmorphia, and I think it also goes back to like the eating disorder that she has. Is like she hates herself. She hates how she looks. And I think is that. She looks back at that time and it's like really hated how she looked.
And then when in reality she looked fine. There was nothing wrong with it. She was actually very pretty.
Because I didn't get from, and correct me if I'm wrong, like the movie I really didn't get the whole she was fat in high school other than her inner dialogue believing she was.
Right, I didn't get that either. Like I thought because in the book that's what it made it seem like. And I will say, it didn't make it seem like she was, like, morbidly obese, but, like, how sometimes you're a little bit chunky. You're not, like, you're not needing, like, surgery or anything, but you're just, big bone. Like, that's what I was picturing, someone, like, big boned. Not necessarily, like, super fat. But, yeah. So then the other thing, I feel like they left out so many key elements. Well, I guess that goes to I wish it was longer. But yeah, I really want to hammer that in. Jessica, if you're listening to this, I thought it was great when you redo it, because everybody does eventually, make it longer, make it a series. Like, the perfect explanation was the movie was about the sexual, the rape, and the book was about the documentary, the shooting, and I think having them both together really is what makes the story so good. I thought that's what interests me, because I thought the rape happened and that was that. And then, get toward the end of the book and I'm like, whoa, there's a shooting, what? And then her healing. I think the healing is also a very important part, because, it's a quote unquote happy ending, even though it's not, which I also like too. I'm sad that she didn't go through with the wedding, because I wish she kind of could have, especially because the guy in the book really wasn't that bad of a guy. I will say though, he didn't know the real her. So once he got to know the real her, would he have still wanted to be with her? That's yet to be determined. But, it really, once she heals, maybe they have a future together. I don't know. But the idea is like, you need to be healed. You have to work on what's going on in here in your heart before you do anything else, before you can even be a better person. And I think that's also kind of what was the overall arching message of it, is like, when you don't work on things, and when you don't work on things on here, you can become and do all these other things. You can become a person you don't know, you don't like, and then eventually one day it's just going to pop. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, and then we should give our score. Last thing, I thought Dean was perfectly cast, because that guy looked like so like perfect, and like, yeah, I thought that was the perfect casting.
We didn't even really touch on Dean. So he went from like the shooting paralyzed him to being like this national figure for gun right advocate. No, gun control.
Gun control, yeah.
And it's really like he like wrote books. He's like I guess like would be like the equivalent to kind of like some of the Parkland school kid shootings.
Yeah.
But like them as adults would be.
Yeah.
And so he just kind of became like this like a national hero for the gun right advocate movement. And that's why like the woman at the end kind of like criticized Donnie. And because it was like, well, you're just saying this because like he's like famous now,
and even if he's
famous and has money,
and even if he did, like, you're messing up the movement, like you're hurting us. Because I've heard people say stuff like that all the time.
Be quiet and let this movement happen. Mm-hmm. Take one for the team.
Yes. There's actually a Scandal episode about that, and I think, that's a very interesting perspective, for lack of a better word. That's a very interesting perspective, but I think that's something that's very relevant in today. And when we even think about some of the politicians we have, like, do you take one for the team and just be quiet, or do you speak what's the truth? And you have to decide whether you want to believe this. You also have to decide whether X, Y, and Z matters to you. So I thought that was another interesting, like, tackle on at the end.
To like being someone who's like, because I came out against like the abuse from my college coach, the emotional and mental abuse he caused me, and I came out about that. And like, I mean, I got attacked from like former teammates, just random people just attacked me as like, well, you're lying and all this stuff. And so like I really like resonated with that, because it is like, no matter, like I said, like no matter like what you're a victim of, someone's going to be like, well, I know who you're accusing. There's no way they would do that. And so, yeah, I mean, I really did that.
Oh, that's good. So let's give the book a score, 1 to 5. What do you think it was? The book.
The book or the movie?
Let's do the book first, and then we'll do the movie.
Oh, I think I gave it a 5. It was really good.
Wow, you give it a 5?
If I can't put it down, I give it a 5. I'm very generous with my scores.
Okay.
But I also could do like, and I guess too, it's like I do like, because I rate everything on Goodreads, and so it's either like, it's whole stars. So I think probably, okay, fine. If I give it a half, I'd probably do like a 4.5.
Okay.
But I thought it was like, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. That was kind of like one of my first like thrillers that I read.
Okay. I give it a 4.5 as 4. I'll say 4.2 as well, or not as well, because you did 4.5. The part where I will say that it did not get the full 5 and it didn't get the excellent is because even so I didn't mention this, but in the book there was like this scene that was like it was a sex scene, and I didn't realize. I was listening to it, I was like, oh my gosh, like I was like taken aback, and that's the only reason why I wouldn't give it a completely 5. But it was the book was really, really, really good. Like that's why you guys know I do the good versus great. It wasn't just a good book; it was a great book. I definitely would recommend it. Just be aware that there's that. I don't even think she really curses in it. But there is. Yeah, there is one sex scene, and then there is the rape.
Yeah, I kind of forgot about that sex scene completely.
Yeah, I was driving, and I was like, oh. But yeah, that's the only reason why I would say 4.2. But it was really good. Okay, now the movie. What do you give the movie?
I get a 3.5. Especially after like talking about it, I feel like it's missing so much.
I know
so much, and I think the biggest issue, it's like it was good. I think it should. I would say it probably followed the book about 80% of the time, but I really felt like we missed out on all the character development. Like, yes. I feel like there was no like character development at all.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do a 3 as well. I'll do a 2.5 actually, because
2.5.
I'll say 2.5 because.
Wait, so you're rating Purple Hearts better than this?
Yeah. Okay, you didn't like Purple Hearts?
No.
Really?
I was so hyped for it because I kept getting like
notifications,
the music ads. Like the music is so good, and like it was like a good story. But I'm like first off, it was so predictable.
What?
And then secondly, hyping so, but secondly too, it was like I felt like it was missing so much.
And that's how I feel about this movie. So, like, before we had the discussion, I think I would have given it...
definitely better than Purple Heart.
I don't feel that way at all.
I was like, I watched it, I'm like, this is it? Like, the songs are so good. Everybody was talking about it, and I'm like, no.
Well, I thought it was so okay. So, like, I think after talking about it more, and really part of the problem, I think I would have given it a higher score if I hadn't read the book. I think if I hadn't read the book, I wouldn't be comparing it to the book, but I really think it's a 2.5. I think it was good-ish. It was good-ish. I think, like, it was missing so much. And I don't...
too, I split it up, too. I watched 45 minutes one day, 45 the next day.
Maybe that helped. Because, I don't know. I don't know if I liked it. I don't know if I would... Like, I would have watched it because I watch anything. But, like, I don't know if I would have been excited for it as... Because it didn't feel like to me, it didn't even feel like a thriller. It felt like just a movie about Me Too. If I'm being honest, like, that's kind of what it felt like. And, I loved me some thrillers, but it didn't feel like a thriller. It was just like a Me Too movie.
Yeah, that's a good point where the book came off as a thriller.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you guys, let us know what you think if you watched it. Did you like the movie? Did you like the book? Did you think the book and the movie were that different? Do you agree that, like, the book and the movie kind of had, like, different focuses? Let us know in the comments. Thank you so much, Vic, for coming on and talking about this movie/book with us. I guess that's it. Bye, everybody.
Bye.